I was standing at the threshold of the church, the crisp autumn air clinging to my shawl as the bells began to chime. My name is Margaret Lane, 68 years old, a retired school secretary, and a widow who still speaks to her late husband when the nights grow too quiet. That morning was supposed to be one of the proudest moments of my life, my only son's wedding day. I carried tissues in my purse, expecting happy tears, not a storm. As I reached for the heavy oak door, a hand wrapped around my arm, I turned, startled, to see the janitor, Mr. Henson, his face pale, his eyes darting as though he was about to commit a sin just by speaking to me. He whispered with urgency, "Ma'am, before you go inside, you need to hear this." His trembling hand held out a small recorder, the kind I used to use in faculty meetings decades ago. Confusion and irritation surged through me. Who dares interrupt a mother on her son's wedding day with something so clandestine? Yet his expression stopped me from brushing him aside. Against the swell of organ music leaking through the doors, I pressed the button. The voice that came out made my heart jolt. It was Claire, the young woman in the white dress inside that church, the woman my son thought he would build a life with. Her tone was cold, detached, nothing like the sweet affection she displayed at family dinners. Once the papers are signed, everything falls into place. The house, the insurance, all of it. Michael is just a bridge to what I actually want. My knees weakened. I clutched the recorder tighter as though it were burning my palm. Shock rushed into anger, then into something harder, resolve. I wanted to scream, to burst through the doors and stop the ceremony with a thunderous voice. Instead, I swallowed the fire and steadied myself. Years of working in an office had taught me the power of patience, of letting documents and details speak louder than outrage. The organ swelled into a triumphant note, signaling the procession had begun. I looked at the janitor, whose hand still hovered nervously near me. He said nothing more, but his eyes asked a desperate question. Would I act on what I had just heard? I turned back to the door, the weight of betrayal pressing on my chest, and whispered to myself, "Not today, Claire, not today." I didn't push the door open. Instead, I pulled my hand back, the recorder still clutched tight, and walked down the side aisle to a smaller entrance near the parish office. My heels clicked against the stone floor, each step echoing louder than the last, as if the church itself knew I was about to break the script of this day. Michael was waiting near the sacristy, adjusting his tie with nervous fingers. When he saw me, his face lit up with that boyish smile he hadn't worn since his father passed. "Mom, you made it," he said, relief in his voice. I forced a smile, but my throat tightened. I looked past him at the priest, Father Collins, who was gathering the ceremonial book and chalice. My voice came out lower than I intended, roughened by the storm inside me. "We need a word, both of you. Now." Michael's brows furrowed. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" I shut the door behind us, sealing us away from the music that grew louder outside. My hands shook as I set the recorder on the table. I pressed play. Claire's voice filled the small room, sharp, unmistakable, cruel. Michael froze. His lips parted, but no words came. His knuckles went white as he gripped the back of a chair. The priest glanced between us, his hand lingering over his cross. The air in the room grew thick, heavier with each passing second of that recording. When the clip ended, the silence was unbearable. Michael's eyes flickered to mine, wide, broken, pleading. "Mom, tell me this isn't real. Tell me this is some kind of sick prank." I reached out and laid my hand over his trembling one. "I wish I could, sweetheart. but it's her voice, and this was handed to me at the door for a reason. Father Collins exhaled slowly, his lined face grim. If this is true, then the vows cannot be spoken in good faith. Marriage demands honesty. This is deceit. Michael sank onto the chair, head in his hands. I wanted to cradle him like I did when he was a child, but I knew that wouldn't shield him from this truth. My heart ached, yet I held myself steady. Listen to me, I whispered firmly. We will not let her walk you into a lifetime of lies. I'll handle this. Today, you are not alone. Michael lifted his tear-filled eyes to mine. I saw in them not only grief, but a flicker of something else, trust. Outside, the organ reached its peak, signaling the bride's entrance. Inside, we sat in a silence louder than any music, a decision hanging over us like a blade. The music outside faded into scattered murmurs when Father Collins stepped out to stall the ceremony. I stayed behind with Michael, whose face had drained of all color. He kept staring at the recorder on the table like it was a live grenade waiting to explode. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. Michael, listen to me, I said, reaching for his arm. This isn't just about disappointment. This is theft dressed as love, and we're going to need proof stronger than our hurt feelings. He looked up, hollow-eyed. Mom, what do we do? Do we just walk out there and tell everyone? No, I said firmly. We call the police. We let them take it from here. Father Collins returned, his presence solemn, his voice low. I've told the ushers there will be a delay. They're keeping the guests seated. He paused, eyes softening. Margaret, you're right. Law must take precedence. I pulled my phone from my purse and dialed. The dispatcher's calm voice answered, and I explained in clipped, measured tones, a possible fraud, a recording, a wedding halted. Within minutes, the sound of sirens carried faintly through the stained glass windows. 2 officers entered, their shoes squeaking against the polished floor. They introduced themselves. Officer Ramirez and Officer Kent, both polite but alert. I handed them the recorder. This was given to me at the church entrance, I said. It contains the bride's voice, describing her intention to marry for financial gain. We believe she may have taken items from my home as well. Officer Ramirez pulled out an evidence bag, sliding the recorder inside with gloved hands. He scribbled on a label, reciting the time allowed for the chain of custody. The meticulousness calmed me. This was familiar ground, the language of procedure. Michael shifted beside me, restless. Do you really think they'll believe this? I placed a hand on his back. They'll believe the process. Paper, procedure, chain of custody. It's how the truth survives. Officer Kent took notes, asking for Claire's full name, address, and our account of the morning. He promised detectives would follow up. They left as quietly as they'd arrived, carrying the tiny machine that now felt like a lifeline. Michael leaned against the wall, shoulders sagging. I thought today was going to be the start of everything. I swallowed hard, steadying my voice. It still can be son, just not with her. Outside, the bells had stopped. Inside, I felt the first stirrings of battle, cold, methodical, and necessary. The next morning, the house felt emptier than ever. Michael had stayed at a friend's apartment for the night, needing space to breathe. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold, my notebook open, pen in hand. Years of office work had trained me to write things down, to organize chaos into lists. This time, though, it wasn't a school schedule. It was my son's future hanging in the balance. When the detectives called, they asked if I'd noticed anything missing from my home recently. My stomach dropped. Yes. My husband's old wedding band, the gold locket he'd given me on our 10th anniversary, a silver watch that had sat in his desk drawer since retirement. I had thought I'd misplaced them, but deep down, I had wondered. I agreed to meet them at the precinct. Sitting across from Detective Harris, I explained everything. He tapped his pen thoughtfully before sliding a folder toward me. Inside were scanned copies of pawn shop receipts. My breath caught when I saw the description. 1 gold band, worn. Inscription inside. The timestamp read 5:12 p.m. I felt my heart hammer. "Detective," I whispered. "I was at the pharmacy at 5:07 that evening. I picked up my prescription. They have cameras. My name is on the receipt." He leaned back, nodding. "That places you out of the house. And if the pawn ticket is time-stamped minutes later, it puts the suspect in possession of the item during that window. Very strong forensics on the timeline." As I stared at the papers, a mixture of grief and vindication swelled inside me. Every object on that list wasn't just property. It was memory, a piece of my husband, a piece of my family's story. Claire hadn't only stolen metal and stone. She had tried to erase my past to control my son's future. Detective Harris asked if I wanted to see the recovered items once they secured them. I shook my head, surprising even myself. "Not yet," I said softly. "Bring them into evidence first. Let the process hold them safe. My heart can wait." Walking out of the station, the autumn air hit my face like a slap, sharp and cleansing. I pulled my coat tighter, telling myself I wasn't just fighting for objects, I was fighting for truth, for my son, for the dignity my husband deserved, even in death. And as the leaves crackled under my shoes, I whispered to the wind, "We're not done yet." A week later, the detectives called me back to the precinct. I arrived with my notebook in hand, my pen ready, as if that act alone could steady the storm inside me. Detective Harris's tone was clipped, but not unkind. "We've secured a warrant to search Ms. Evans' apartment," he said. "We'd like you present to identify any belongings if recovered." The word warrant settled into my chest like a stone, cold, official, irreversible. For years, I had filed paperwork for principals and superintendents, ensuring signatures were in the right place, that forms had weight in the eyes of the district. But this was the law in motion, not a school policy. We drove to Claire's building in an unmarked car. The neighborhood was tidy, tree-lined, the kind of place that pretended ugliness didn't live behind closed doors. When the officers knocked and announced the search, Claire's startled voice rang out. She opened the door in a silk robe, her hair half-pinned, eyes wide. The mask of innocence slipped when she saw me standing there beside the detectives. "This is harassment," she snapped, her voice cracking. "You can't just barge in here." Detective Harris read the warrant aloud, his voice steady, leaving no space for argument. Officers entered, gloves on, cameras flashing. I stayed near the doorway, my hands clasped so tightly the knuckles burned. From the bedroom, I heard drawers pulled open, boxes shifted, the scrape of hangers across a rod. Then came a voice. "We've got something." They emerged carrying a small jewelry box. Inside lay my husband's silver watch, the gold locket, and a scattering of rings, even from across the room. I recognized the curve of the band that once circled my finger, inscribed with initials that had bound me to a man now gone. Claire's face blanched, then hardened. "Those were gifts," she insisted. "Michael gave them to me. This is all a misunderstanding." I stepped forward, my voice quiet but unshakable. "Michael didn't give you what belonged to his father, and he certainly didn't give you my wedding band." The officers photographed each item, sealing them in evidence bags. Every snap of a plastic seal sounded like a nail in the coffin of her lies. Claire folded her arms, chin raised, still clinging to her performance. But I didn't need to argue. The law, and the paper trail it demanded, was speaking louder than either of us. When we left, I exhaled for the first time in hours. The box was gone, but justice had taken its first tangible form. The search had left Claire cornered, but she didn't retreat quietly. Within days, her presence seeped into our lives like smoke through cracks. Michael's phone lit up with messages, each one more desperate than the last. "You don't understand. Your mother is twisting everything." Then another, hours later. "I only wanted us to be happy. She hates me because I'm not her." Michael showed me the texts, his jaw tight, his eyes clouded. "She's trying to make me doubt you," he muttered. I took his phone gently and said, "Let her words sit on the record, not in your heart." I forwarded the messages to Detective Harris, attaching dates and times. Procedure was my refuge, but Claire wasn't content with words on a screen. One evening, I came home to find a small package on my porch, my name scrawled in rushed handwriting across the cardboard. Inside was nothing but tissue paper and a single note: "Return what's mine or face a lawsuit." I held the box in my hands, a chill racing down my spine. The audacity of it, sending threats to the very house she had stolen from, stirred both fury and a grim kind of awe. She was reckless now, cornered, throwing sparks in every direction. I called the precinct. An officer arrived, photographed the package, sealed the note in an evidence bag, and left me with a receipt. Another line added to the growing paper trail. I set my copy of the receipt inside a folder already thick with documents. That night, Michael sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands. "I can't believe I almost said vows to her," he whispered, his voice cracked, raw. "Mom, I feel like a fool." I reached across, wrapping his trembling hands in mine. "You are not a fool," I said, my voice steady. "You are a good man who trusted someone unworthy. That doesn't make you weak. It makes her deceit stronger. And that is on her, not you." The porch light flickered through the window, casting long shadows across the table. I could feel the house breathing with us, walls holding secrets and pain. I promised him, and maybe myself too. "This isn't over. Michael, she can shout, she can threaten, she can send empty boxes. But we will answer with evidence, with truth, with every sheet of paper that proves her lies." Outside, the night stretched cold and silent, but inside, resolve burned hotter than ever. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and nerves. Michael walked beside me, his suit too tight at the shoulders, his steps heavy. I kept my hand on his arm, steadying him the way I had on his first day of school decades earlier. Now, instead of crayons and notebooks, he carried heartache and humiliation. Claire sat across the aisle at the defendant's table, her hair curled perfectly, her eyes rimmed with red as though she had cried all night. To anyone glancing quickly, she looked like the wounded party, but I had lived long enough to know performance when I saw it. The prosecutor began with the pawn receipts, the recovered jewelry, and the police chain of custody. Each piece landed like a stone in water, ripples spreading through the courtroom. Claire's attorney objected, calling it family misunderstanding, but the judge allowed the evidence. Then came my turn. The prosecutor handed me a folder. "Miss of Ghislaine, can you confirm this email came from the defendant's account?" I adjusted my glasses, heart pounding. The printout bore Claire's address at the top. The message was blunt: application approved. Single occupancy lease begins October 1st. The date was 2 weeks before the wedding. A murmur rippled across the room. Claire's face drained of color, Her attorney leaned toward her, whispering furiously. I spoke into the microphone, my voice calm, even cold. This proves intent. She never meant to build a home with my son. She meant to secure what wasn't hers and live elsewhere once she had it. Michael lowered his head into his hands, the sound of his breath shaking. My heart broke for him, but I didn't let it falter in my tone. He needed my strength more than my pity. Claire tried to speak, her voice pitching high. That was temporary housing, just until... The judge's gavel cut her off. Order. The prosecutor pressed on. Combined with pawn receipts, recovered property, and threatening notes, the email shows a pattern of deceit. This is not a misunderstanding. This is calculated fraud. The words echoed. Undeniable. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the scales tilt in our favor. My hands relaxed around the edges of the folder, and I glanced at Michael. His eyes were wet, but for the first time, there was no doubt, only clarity. The battle was nearly over. The judge's words cut through the silence like a final chord. Claire Evans was found guilty of fraud and ordered to pay restitution. She received probation and, most importantly, a no-contact order with Michael and me. The sound of the gavel striking wood echoed like thunder, sealing the end of her performance. Michael sat beside me, motionless, as if he needed the words repeated to believe them. I touched his hand gently. "It's done, son. She can't reach you now." He exhaled, long and shaky, his shoulders collapsing in relief. For weeks he had carried the weight of betrayal, the shame of being fooled. In that moment, I saw some of it lift, even if scars would remain. Outside the courthouse, the autumn wind whipped leaves across the steps. Reporters murmured, but I kept my head high, guiding Michael past the cameras. We owed no one our grief. Life after court wasn't easy. Nights were still heavy. Silence still loud. Michael started seeing a therapist, and slowly, I saw changes, a straighter posture, steadier eyes. He spent afternoons at the public library, where he eventually struck up conversations with a kind woman who volunteered at the front desk. I never asked about her directly, but when I noticed his smile linger longer, I felt hope flicker. As for me, I returned to my routines. I gardened. I read. I kept meticulous folders of everything until the restitution was complete. When the final envelope arrived confirming payment, I placed it inside a large binder, thick with documents from the ordeal. I pressed the binder shut with both hands, listening to the solid click as if it were a vault closing. That evening, I carried the binder to the cabinet in the hallway and slid it into place among other records of my life, birth certificates, mortgage papers, letters from my husband. Then I walked outside. The sky had deepened to a bruised purple. I reached up and switched on the porch light. Its warm glow spilled across the walkway, steady and sure, chasing back the dark. I stood there for a long moment, breathing in the night air, the weight of months finally lifting. My husband's memory was safe. My son was free. The house, though quieter than I wished, felt secure again. Justice had not come swiftly, but it had come. And in the glow of that porch light, I knew we could begin again. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.